Welcome to MOST Balkan Focus about music and authors' rights. My name is Klaffs, and as a manager of Piranha Records and Publishing, together with our team, we represent 1,200 copyrights with recordings and compositions from all over the world. Our main activities as a recording label and a publisher is to help to navigate the artists and the authors through the international music business. I think what is special about Piranha Records is that we present a huge variety of musical genres and styles. So these include forró music from Brazil, for instance, or mbira music from the Shona culture of Zimbabwe, or hip-hop from Senegal, Balkan brass music from Romania and Serbia, and many other styles. We believe in music rights for artists and authors very strongly. So before speaking about the whole detailed copyrights, the money streams and all of that, let's first pay respect to the musicians and creators of the music. The International Music Council has established the 5 important music rights. So the first right is to express yourself musically in all freedom, at all time. The second right is to learn musical languages and skills. The third one is to actually have access to musical involvement through participation, listening, creation, and information. And the fourth right, that goes out especially to the creative musical artist, is to develop your artistry and communicate through all media with proper facilities at your disposal. And last but not least, and this is what we will look on our MOST Balkan focus, it's the right to obtain just recognition and fair remuneration for your work. Before the time the copyright was invented, everybody could just copy or duplicate in writing or in oral history telling a story from another creator or person without paying for it or being paid. Today's music rights and authors' rights are relatively young invention in the history of copyright law. As the name copyright says it clearly, it's the right to copy. This became more and more necessary only in the younger part of the human history, especially with the invention of book printing. Numerous copies became an issue. One of the first copyrights was invented in the UK, and that was 1710 with the Statute of Anne. To promote and facilitate the production of books, to promote reading, education, but also financial stability for the publishers involved that were working together with authors, this copyright guaranteed an exclusive exploitation of the works at that time for about 14 years. This can be seen as one of the first legal frameworks to grant a copyright. Our present copyright system is basically founded on the Treaty of the Berne Convention that happened in Bern in Switzerland, and today this treaty has over 180 members. It was the first treaty that was particularly international and giving like a standard framework valid for all member states, giving really a foundation of authors' rights. By the way, it was co-initiated by Victor Hugo, who wrote Les Miserables. Before we go deeper into the Berne Convention, which was established in 1886, let us just remember a small anecdote. About 50 or 40 years before that, it happened in Paris. And it happened one day, the composer Ernest Bourget was visiting a cafe called Ambassadeur in Paris with a friend. And they were drinking there together, and some musicians were playing his music, actually. So when the bill came for the drinks, Mr. Bourget, he said, well, as you were playing my music for free, I will have your drinks for free. And there you go. Then the cafe tried to sue Mr. Bourget, and before court, he was awarded fair remuneration of his musical works. Because actually what happened, everybody played some music that they would have remembered or listened or written down on sheet without remuneration to the creators. Basic principles of the Berne Convention include, as I said, that they are valid for every state. without any barriers or entry levels. So no registration of copyright is necessary to have created a valid copyright. That's very important. And it gave the authors the exclusive rights really to control their own creative work. Included the protection to translate a work, because another short anecdote, the United States, they printed and imported literature from Europe, but never paid anybody there. That's because their copyright wouldn't give remuneration to foreign creators. The Berne Convention also highlighted the importance that the author has the exclusive right to communicate about his work, to publish it, to alter it, to make arrangements, to combine it with other works, means also a combination with audiovisual productions, which is called synchronization, and to publish them commercially. All these rights were exclusive author rights, the first time in human history, and nobody could use the works without permission or license. These rights should be valid in all member states on the same level. And very important, they should be accessible, meaning not subject to costly procedures of registration with a certain institution. But these rights were constituted by creation of the work. So imagine you're walking through the forest and you have that idea. The idea first is not protected, but once you've fixate the idea onto a paper with a pen and you leave the pen, you have created a copyright for yourself. Another principle, which historically you can see is different for the European copyright from the US American or Anglo-Saxon copyright, is the concept of droit moral. So this moral right is something that is attached to the Berne Convention very closely to the author, meaning that the copyright and the name, the work and the name of the creator, he, she, they, should always stay. So nobody should be able to buy out a copyright and attach their own new name to it, meaning respecting the creator and the creators. Also putting an emphasis on the personal rights and feelings of the creator towards a work that was created. That's why the droit moral also includes the necessity that you cannot use a work, let's say a song, and put it in context with a derogatory, say, or giving the creator a bad feeling context. For instance, if somebody is not drinking alcohol, the music should not be used in an alcohol commercial. No adaptation should be done without permission of the author. That is very important. We have to look at two different copyrights always in the music business. These two copyrights, they complement each other. It's a bit like yin and yang, you could say. First, we have the copyright for the composition, so the initial idea for a musical work, and the combination with lyrics. Traditionally, it's the copyright, yes, or author's rights. Initially, you had to have a lead sheet or some notes presenting to create a work. Today, of course, with technology, that's a different task that can be done digitally. Once this copyright is created, it's attached to a person. Yeah, that is important. And how long is that copyright protected? By the Berne Convention and today's WIPO regulations, in most of the countries, it's 70 years until after the death of the composer. That is important that when you create a musical work, that you can enjoy the proceedings and the use of your work, not only you, but also your family, your heirs, or whoever you pass on after your death, that right. If we look at the different use cases, yeah, for a composition, that's traditionally used in a recording, because if an artist is recording your song, then your song is part of the copyright. Yeah? If some somebody like a piano student is buying a score sheet, yeah, from your song, then you're using your copyright and you have to be remunerated from the money that goes to the shop, then goes to the distributor, then goes maybe to the publisher or to you directly. If your composition is used in a film or an audiovisual commercial, then as well you have a right for remuneration. So this is the one side. So copyright for the idea of the song, the composition, the melody, and the lyrics. Now the other side of the yin and yang picture is the recording itself. Yeah, the recording of your composition builds its own copyright. So once the music is recorded, that can be done in a studio, it can be done in a live recording, wherever, it's not possible to exploit that commercially without the consent and authorization of those involved into the recording. Of course, we already mentioned the writer, the composer, but of course the performing artists are involved. There might be a producer, might be involved, who helps to facilitate the studio recording. In a recording, there might be a use of a sample from another recording. So you see, a recording can have many right holders. So we have these both rights. We have the right of the recording, also called master right, and we have the right of the composition. And these are basically the very fundamental pillars of our business as creators, as facilitators, as managers, as partners in that process. Speaking of compositions, how can we protect this copyright? It is important to document it. Yeah, this can be done by a written version or a sound recording. And what is especially important is if you're not the only creator of that musical work, but if we talk about collaboration, like you would have in a songwriting camp, it is very important that before you leave the room, and this is really important, before you leave the room together, you should sit down and in writing agree upon who shares what share of that work and composition. You might be happily going in a jam session or having the greatest time with a couple of beers in the studio or whatever, yeah? And you think, oh, everybody remember what was said in the room and so on, but we are human beings and it's not the way it works. And just to be fair to each other, it's really important to document that creative process. And the first and easy step is just to have a paper and let me show you an example of a so-called split sheet. So here we're looking at a split sheet, which basically lists the date, the involved artist, recording artist, or co-writing artist. I could also set the project title, if it's an album, the involved label or other parties or producer, the location, and then really write down who are the co-writers and what are the splits. If everybody says, oh, we're easy, everybody gets the same, we're Fab 4, 25%, it's fine. Then write it down. Or if somebody came up with the lyrics and the others shared the music to it, then you could give the lyrics 50% and the others share the other 50% amongst them. And this would be signed. And this could be the basis then for any further contracts. But then at least you don't chop your heads off about having an argument about that day, what actually happened. So this is a very important advice, especially when you're not the sole composer. So now that you created a musical work yourself, and this is just not for your private enjoyment or for your family, but actually you see that your musical work will go into a life cycle of a commercial, I say, exploitation, or it will be publicly broadcasted and used by others, then it is important to check and consider to become a member of a copyright organization. This can be a performance right organization or a collective copyright organization, management organization, and this will help that your work will be attributed to your person. By becoming a member, you will get an interested party identifier. It's called an IPI number. It's an international number that connects the works that you register with a copyright organization to your individual person. In many countries, we have different copyright organizations. For instance, in Germany, we have a collective copyright management organization, which is called GEMA. The first advice would be to first become a member at your national home copyright organization. So once you're a member of your home national copyright organization and your musical works and the songs attached to it become more internationally popular, you might consider also becoming a member of another copyright organization in a bigger market. So the procedure then is to look, where are your works going strong in what market? The only important thing then is to have no overlapping licenses, right? So you will need to tell your home copyright organizations that your rights are represented by another copyright organization in a different country. In theory, all of the copyright organizations, they are sister companies. Yeah, that's the wording for it. Meaning they try to exchange information. If, let's say, you're coming from Serbia and your music is played in France, then they try to check, okay, what music of a Serbian author was played in France. The challenge is that your works are not automatically registered in France. So for the French side of it, it's harder to find your repertoire if it's not registered there. And that's why many complain, oh, my songs are played abroad, but I don't get as much money as I should be. And this is just due to the fact that there's not one central database in the world. And that's why it is important to have your works registered with your IPI, your interested party identifier, in as many important territories as possible. To be registered all over the world at different copyright organizations, this will be a very hard thing to do for a composer themselves. Meaning to become a member everywhere means to follow the regulations for entry or for membership, to pay membership fees. And this is where you might need to look for an international partner. And we can talk about different levels of partnerships that would help composers to be properly registered in many territories. This is when the role of the publisher comes into place. So usually, for example, you could find a publisher that is part of an international network of other publishers, then so-called sub-publishers. Depending on how you developed your catalog so far, the catalog is the entity of all your songs that you created, you can enter different levels of partnerships. Let's say you have a big team yourself, you could also say, okay, I just want administration. I don't want to have a creative help in selling my music or finding other partners or artists or record labels. Then that would be an administration deal. The administration deal is because it involves a smaller level of services by the publishing company, is taking a lower share of your royalties. So the administration deal, you speak typically about 15% share for this. But if you're new to the business and you don't know the other territories and you don't have teams there, you don't, and you want to focus on your creative process, then you might consider to go into a standard publishing deal, which usually would be like 50% for the publisher and 50% for the composer. That for a certain time, for a contractual time and exploitation time of the works, before you enter a long-term deal, you have to be very, very careful to really scrutinize and check about how your potential partner, is working, how committed they are, what are the experiences with other authors working with the publisher. These are basic advices to check, and before you sign, always have your own legal advice and lawyer to check a contract, for instance. So what is in a publishing contract? For a certain duration, you give exclusive license, you grant the license so the publisher can work with your composition. The longer you bind yourself to a publisher, then you might ask for a higher advance. Traditionally, some contracts would go for the whole copyright protection period. And let's remember, that's 70 years after your death. You can grant a license for 10 years or 15 years with automatic renewal. It's important to say that you don't lose your copyright. You just grant a license, right? But you lose the ability to change the partnership if the contract is very long. So keep in mind that and try to find a good balance with automatic renewal options. There are different deals. The one deal is where you actually, as an author, as a person, you sign in a deal with a publisher that all your existing works and your future works are exclusively binded to the publisher. So this is called like an author exclusivity agreement, whereby you can also decide to just license 10 songs to a publisher. For instance, if you're a recording artist at the same time, because you can be a composer and recording artist or singer-songwriter, of course. Let's say you have a recording album project with a record company and you have a separated publishing contract because they are able to do good publishing work, then you don't want to sign your whole catalog. You just maybe want to sign the tracks on this album. This is a title publishing contract. Yeah? So there are two different contracts, author exclusivity and title exclusivity in a publishing contract. Another way to work when composing is also the so-called work for hire. This will happen more in production music, let's say in score music for film productions, composers that work in a certain project and compose for a certain film, for instance, then they can agree to getting paid a fixed fee. And depending on the fee, they will hand over control to the film production company or their publisher. And another option is the co-publishing contract, where basically speaking, you are a very established composer in the market, and you say, I want to give not 50% away of the income to a publisher. I just want to become a co-publisher myself. So I'm a sort of on a say eye level with a publisher or the co-publisher. So you retain 75% and the publishing company as a co-publisher gets 25%. Yeah, it's important to keep not just a legal relationship, but also a creative relationship thing as a composer with your partners. Let's take an inside view under the hood what a music publisher is actually doing for the composers. So one important role is really to manage the licensing and negotiating fees and royalties for you as an author. So because publishers, they have like industry knowledge about how much a license to a film production is actually worth, or how much your repertoire is worth. So it's important that they know your repertoire, and then they can help negotiate with the pros, like the music supervisors for one partners that the publishers are dealing with, or sometimes also the music sync agents who work with supervisors. Another important activity of the music publishers is actually also to promote your works. So this could be done because they have also good industry networks, know people from TV shows, know people from record labels who are looking for fitting songs, yeah, to interpret on new recordings. So these are like the important soft powers of a publishing. A very important role of the publisher is with their publishing network is really to collecting and controlling your copyrights that are used internationally. So it means really checking upon are all concert, all touring activity, is it correctly registered with the copyright organization? If it's correctly registered, did they actually pay the right amount because they know about the distribution scheme, how much money is due once your song is played at the big stadium or during the stadium in a radio or TV show. Here it cannot be, how I say, underestimated that also your collaboration as an artist, composer, or active musician is important. So every time you have a live performance, to have a playlist ready that is already registered with your copyright organization, has all information, we call it also metadata, the right names, the right song names, the right international standard work code numbers for the title. So to make sure that it's just not a piece of paper with some whiskey-soaked titles given to the promoter, but it's actually a correct and with full information filled out playlist that goes to the copyright organization. You might ask yourself, okay, so I composed my songs, I registered them, and I said, and now it's the time to actually find a fitting publisher. Then it's recommended that you might look at your fellow composers or somebody you know, or artists, composer, writers that you admire, to actually check which publishers they have agreements with. So then you can maybe also ask other composers about their experiences. That is some advice. You can look into the association. Many of the publishers, they have national association and they are member lists. So you can enter the members, you can see how they work, how active they are. Also the charts, they publish a list of the most successful publishers. If you're doing like a high value popular music with the potential for charting there, you could say, hey, I'm writing songs with this and this potential, and then you will try to contact them and make yourself seen and heard there. Given that the music publishers, they create value for composers and authors, and that's basically the main task of entering an agreement or a relationship with the music publishers. And let's not forget that traditionally, music composers are not as seen or not as prominent in the limelight as are the artists on stage, but they are just as well important because they are like the foundation of all creative works that come after. And music publishers, they help really giving the authors that value. So by controlling your works, by promoting your works, by making good business relations, so maybe getting you into compository work for a film production. And this is the reason why a good partnership can really make a difference in your composing career. Now, speaking about copyright and authors and the creative process, today I think we should really mention what is potentially coming up with artificial intelligence, because many in the industry are now discussing and speaking and studying how will it affect all of us, meaning the composers, the publishers, the copyright organizations. As of now, we know artificial intelligence is able to sort of, by algorithm, create a musical work. As of now, it has no status of a copyright. So if artificial intelligence is creating a musical work, it itself has no copyright, because a copyright by law is really fixed to the creative process and work of a person. If we're looking for future developments in copyright, I think we can look at two different areas here. The one area is that AI and data processing can really be beneficial for the whole industry for us, because lots of what is happening in the remuneration process is fully outdated. I mean, we are in a digital world today. What we really need is maybe a blockchain processed, smart contract driven process of remuneration of your copyright. Meaning every time your musical work is used in a radio or in a film or anywhere, then through a smart contract automatically money could land on your account. Yeah. So that's the vision that we all wish for. And we're speaking for many years about blockchain, but it has not happened yet. But still, the way it is done, that we don't have that one database now, that many things are done manually, there's so much black box money not attributed correctly to the authors who deserve it. These are all things we have to overcome, yeah? And technology can be the answer for that. So we should really look in a modern and open way to technological development. This is the one side where we see tech can help, absolutely. The other side is when it comes to replacing human creativity by artificial intelligence. That is something that can be seen, some say it's dooming over us. It will wash away all like heartful made music. But we don't believe that will take place, because still human creativity with a pain and love and heart feeling all of there, that will actually be not replaceable by artificial intelligence. The industry and our partners, be it the composers and agents that we work with, we are convinced that we need to have guardrails towards artificial intelligence, because the copyright should be really created for human beings, by human beings, and not from machines who basically use an algorithm that guesses on basis of training data that we never were remunerated for instance. So that is why now in Europe we have the AI Act, very freshly constituted, with the aim of helping to protect also the human creators of creative works. In this way, I think we have to be very attentive. When I say we have to keep our eyes open and ears open there, and we should be fighting. Everybody should really have a close look and educate yourself about this transformation with AI and the creative process. But AI can also be a very useful tool in songwriting. Sometimes you can make automatic musical sheets from recordings. You can produce stems. Stems need the musical groupings of instruments. All this is happening with AI, and these are wonderful tools and use cases, but they are not replacing the copyright to a human being, and we think that is important. So AI, yes, it can be helpful and useful, but it should have guardrails. Was the MOST Balkan focus on music rights and authors' rights? Keep the creativity, enjoy making music, look out for partnerships that are fruitful and will help you in your career. And that's our advice.